Good day, I'm one of the three reporters that will be discussing about Aristotle's virtue theory. My name is Dioquino and I hope at the end of our discussion you learned something. Without further ado, let's start our discussion. So, virtue ethics is a philosophy developed by Aristotle and other ancient Greeks. By definition, it is the quest to understand and live a life of moral character. This character-based approach to morality assumes that we acquire virtue through our practice. By practicing being honest, brave, just, generous, and so on, a person then develops an honorable and moral character. According to Aristotle, by honing virtuous habits, people will likely make the right choice when faced with ethical challenges. So basically, virtue ethics means that a person with virtuous characters will make the right decisions. So, for example, I am a virtuous person. Most likely, if I was faced with challenges, then I will make the right decision. There is no concern that I will make the bad decision. And it is based on my character, not based on any rule book or any set of codes that has been given to me. Another one is virtue theory doesn't spend a lot of time telling you what to do. There's no categorical imperative or principle of utility. These two concepts, the categorical imperative and principle of utility, is present in the two other theories, the utilitarianism and the deontology, which we will not be discussing about, but we will use them to differentiate virtue theory from them. So instead of categorical imperative and principle of utility, the virtue theory is focused on our character. Rather than following the set of rules, as I've said earlier. Aristotle and other virtue theorists reasoned that if you can just focus on being good people, the right actions will follow effortlessly. So as I've said, there's no worry that we will make the bad decision because we are confident that we already absorbed the good character and that we will make the right decision. And there is no rule book needed, so this is what makes virtue theory different from these other two theories. So for us to have a deeper understanding, let's have another definition or more discussion about virtue ethics. Virtue ethics emphasizes the development of character as its central theme rather than trying to define goodness or rightness. So again, it is compared to the other two virtue theories that focuses on the rightness or the goodness, but virtue ethics is presented or is given for us to develop our character. It is a eudaimonistic theory as it holds happiness to be our highest goal. So for us to understand, a eudaimonistic theory aims the highest human good. The only human good that is desirable for its own sake. So basically a virtue theory also aims for us to be the best versions of ourselves rather than just doing what is good for that time. Another differentiation of these three theories, and we will highlight the virtue ethics. To illustrate the difference among the three key moral philosophies, ethicists Mark White and Robert Arp refer to the film The Dark Knight, where Batman has the opportunity to kill the Joker. Utilitarians, one of the three moral philosophies White and Arp suggest would endorse killing the Joker, because by taking this life, Batman could save multitudes. So utilitarians, or the people that believes in utilitarianism, focuses on the happiness or the good of many people rather than just saving one life. But the deontologist, on the other hand, would reject killing the Joker simply because it is wrong to kill. So ang magagawin naman ng mga deontologists is faced in this situation, in the example, will not kill the Joker because they believe that killing the Joker is bad, and they are following a set of rule, and they are just following because that's what's given to them that is right. And if a virtue ethicist is in this situation, if Batman is a virtue ethicist, it would highlight the character of the person who kills the Joker. Does Batman want to be the kind of person who takes his enemies' lives? No, in fact, he doesn't. So this example really differentiates these three. And in virtue ethics, Batman is a person that has good character. He doesn't want to kill, but he wants to save lives. So virtue ethics highlights that character of Batman. Virtue ethics helps us understand what it means to be a virtuous human being, and it gives us a guide for living a life without giving us specific rules for resolving ethical dilemmas. I hope you are getting something, and we will discuss more. Virtue ethics, as I've said, doesn't follow rules, and it doesn't closes you in a box. And according to Aristotle, there is no need to be a specific, because if you're virtuous, you know what to do in the right time, and you know how to handle yourself and how to get along with others, and you will have a good judgment, and you can read the room, and you know what's right to do in that time. So basically, in Tagalog, sinasabi na ang virtue ethics ay hindi siya nakasarado sa mga kung ano ang mga sinasabi sa atin ng mga iba't ibang theories, but rather virtue ethics ay nagdi-discuss sa atin na kung ano ang gagawin natin kapag tayo ay nasa ganitong sitwasyon. Dahil sa virtue ethics, mapapakita natin kung ano ang katangian o ang character na meron tayo kapag tayo ay naharap sa mga ganitong situations. For example, if an old woman has been robbed and you see it, would a virtue person just get or just help the grandma because he is virtuous? The answer is no, because a good person or a virtuous person would rather assess if he would assess the situation. For example, kunwari ako ang nakakita sa matanda na ninanakawan, i-assess ko yung magnanakaw kung kaya ko ba itong labanan, kung kapag gumawa ba ako ng action agad na kunwari kukunin ko yung ninakaw sa kanya o bubugbugin ko yung taong nagnakaw, kaya ko bang i-handle? And if the answer is yes, then I will do it agad. Pero kapag the answer is no, what I will do is call the police and ask for the authorities to help the person. With that, I am protecting myself and I am helping the grandma. I hope you understand that. So let's move to the next slide. The doctrine of the mean. Aristotle thought that there is needed to be a better structure for people to understand how to follow the above virtues successfully. He identified corresponding vices to these virtues. He noted that each virtue there are two vices, the deficiencies and the excesses. So Aristotle wants to guide us on how we should do this virtue successfully, that we don't give too much and we don't give not enough or less of that virtue. Because in an excessive vice, there is too much of a certain virtue, and in the deficiency vice, there is not enough of that certain virtue. And in the middle part of that is the virtuous path or the golden mean. The doctrine of The mean states that there is a balance between these two vices, and Aristotle called this the golden mean. The golden mean removes the negative aspects of each virtue to produce a pure form of this virtue, which leads on the right path towards eudaimonia. So, for us to be able to successfully execute or absorb or have this character of a virtuous person, we should learn how to balance the situation, or we should learn how to balance in execution of this character. For example, balik natin yung sa kanina, if I see a grandma being robbed, what should I do? If I attack the robber and in attempt to get kung ano yung ninakaw sa matanda, without assessing kung kaya ko ba talaga i-handle yung situation, or kung kaya ko pa ipagtanggol yung sarili ko, kung kaya ko ipagtanggol yung matanda, then I am being excessive. I am performing an excessive vice because I am being reckless. I did not think of the risk that I am putting to the grandma and myself. In opposite to that, if I am giving deficiency vice, or basically I am being coward, then I will not do anything. I will run away. Oh, that's what I will do. I will run away and not give a care to that situation na ninanakawan yung matanda. But in the middle part of that, the balance part of that, is if I am being courageous. Being courageous doesn't mean that I will attack agad-agad without assessing the situation. Because if you're courageous, then I will then assess yung situation. Kunwari, iisipin ko kung kaya ko ba i-handle yung pwede kong maharap na violence, kasi baka saktan ako ng magnanakaw, o kung kaya ko ba protektahan yung matanda. If my answer is yes, if I can execute successfully na masave yung matanda at yung gamit niya, then I am being courageous. But if not, what a courageous person would do is that he would call the authorities, he would call the police, and ask for them to help and be of help in rescuing the grandma. So if I do this, then I am balanced. I am not being reckless, and I am not being coward. I am being courageous. So that's why there is a presence of the golden mean, so that we can do this certain virtue without being too much or being less. So if you have successfully adopted these virtues and it became part of your character, and it becomes part of who you are, then it's leading you to the path towards eudaimonia. Eudaimonia doesn't have a simple English translation, but I will read its definition from Crash Course. Eudaimonia means a life well lived or human flourishing. A life of eudaimonia is a life of striving. It's a life of pushing yourself to your limits and finding success. A eudaimonistic life will be full of happiness that comes from achieving something really difficult, rather than just having it handed to you. So, this kind of life means you continuously strive, and you achieve that happiness when you successfully fulfilled that goal that you are wanting. But also, in this way of life, people will not stop improving, people will not be stagnant, and will not settle in the level that they are now, because they have the goal, because their goal is to be the best version of themselves. And in this way of life, it doesn't mean that you will be living in a bed of roses or in a bed of cupcakes and rainbows, but in this kind of life, people will have satisfaction of achieving that goal that I've said that you have worked hard for. So that's a eudaimonistic life. It's a life wherein you do something to improve yourself while also working in your weaknesses. You hone your strength and you work your weaknesses, and by that you will, over time, will have a life where you will be a person where a virtuous person that is effortlessly doing or facing life in the best way he or she can. I hope you have learned something about this part of our discussion about Aristotle's virtue ethics, the definition of virtue ethics, the difference of virtue ethics to the two theories, the utilitarianism and the deontology, also about the golden mean, the principle of the golden mean, and how to live a life in eudaimonia. Justine will be following me in this report, and I hope you listen to her also very well and learn something from her. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Justine Simanes, and for today's discussion, I will be discussing about the point 1, point 2, and the 3 types of soul in lesson 1. So we will start in point 1. According to point 1, one of the main ideas of Aristotle's teachings is the idea of finding balance. Aristotle argued that all virtue in life is achieved by maintaining the golden mean. So when we say golden mean, the golden mean or golden middle way is the desirable middle between two extremes, one of excess and the other of deficiency. When we say deficiency, ito yung kakulangan, and when we say excess, ito yung sobra. It appeared in Greek thought at least as early as the Delphic maxim, nothing in excess, and emphasized in later Aristotelian philosophy. So, this means that in order to find happiness, people should always strive for a balance between two extremes. So, here's an example. Did you ever encounter someone who is a bit of coward? Typically, he or she doesn't dare to speak up or act when facing danger, opposition, or threat. Sabi dito, kung naka-encounter ka na ba ng taong may pagka-coward o may pagkaduwag, na siya mismo hindi nakakapagsalita kapag nasa oras ng kapahamakan. Now, did you ever encounter someone who is totally reckless and unconcerned about the consequences of his or her actions? So, sabi naman dito, kung naka-encounter ka na ba ng taong reckless or unconcerned, yung parang mga walang pake about sa mga magiging consequences ng kanilang mga actions. So, in Golden Mean, it says that to be known as the Golden Mean, it is essentially the same as the Buddha's middle path between self-indulgence and self-renunciation. Thus, courage, for example, is the mean between two extremes. One can have a deficiency of it, which is cowardice, and one can have an excess of it. So, as mentioned, the courage is the middle between these two extremes. A person is neither too much of a coward nor too reckless. Instead, he is courageous. He has learned to find a balance between these two extremes. According to Aristotle, this person, Aristotle argues, will be a virtuous and happy person. Itong person daw na to, magiging banal or magiging mabuting tao and masayahing tao. Kasi siya ay nasa balance or nababalansa niya yung dalawang extreme and nahanap niya kung ano yung iniibig sabihin ng golden mean. As we can see below, we have this Aristotle's concept of the golden mean. So we have balance, we have deficiency, and excess. I already discussed what is excess and what is balance. What is the deficiency. So today, I will be giving you the meaning of these words because I know ang iba sa inyo hindi pa familiar sa mga words na to. So we will start in courage. When we say in courage, we have this deficiency and we have excess. The deficiency of courage is cowardice and the excess is rashness. When we say cowardice, it is the lack of bravery. And when we say rashness, it is a kind of carelessness. It is a failure to think about how your actions might harm yourself or someone else. In generosity, we have stinginess or miserliness, and in excess, we have extravagance. When we say stinginess or miserliness, it is a lack of generosity. And when we say extravagance, it is a lack of restraint in spending money or use of resources. In ambition, we have sloth and we have greed. When we say sloth, it is a reluctance to work or make an effort, or in short, it is laziness. And in greed, it is an intense and selfish desire for something. Next is modesty. We have humility and pride. When we say humility, it is a modest or slow view of one's own importance or humbleness. And in pride, it is a feeling of deep pleasure or satisfaction. Next is honesty. We have here secrecy and we have loquacity. In secrecy, it is the action of keeping something secret, of the state of being kept secret. And in loquacity, it is the quality of talking a great deal. Or when we say talkativeness, we say talkativeness. And we have here good humor. We have moroseness and absurdity. Amoroseness, it is a glowy or ill-tempered feeling. And absurdity, it is the quality of state of being moleculous of wildly unreasonable. Next is friendship. We have here quarrelsomeness and we have flattery. When we say quarrelsomeness, it is a state of being quick to argue or disagree. And flattery, it is an excessive and insincere praise, given especially to further one's own interests. In temperance, we have self-indulgence and insensibility. When we say self-indulgence, it is an excessive or unrestrained gratification of one's own appetite, desires, and whims. And when we say insensibility, it is an unconsciousness, lack of awareness, and concern. Next is composure. We have apathy and irritability. When we say apathy, it is a lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. And when we say irritability, it is the quality or state of being irritable. Next and last is self-control. We have here indecisiveness and impulsiveness. In indecisiveness, it is the condition or quality of being unable to decide, conclude, or resolve something. And when we say impulsiveness, it is doing things or tending to do things suddenly and without careful thought. So let's move on in point 2. According to point 2, another idea of Aristotle's teachings is that he recommends moderation. We all know too much alcohol will cause a hangover. We all know sleeping only 3 to 4 hours will harm our body and health. We all know that too much sunlight will give us a sunburn. Still, people keep falling into this trap time after time. But what is it that makes living in excess or deficiency so tempting? Aristotle argues that people who don't respect the golden mean principle think more about short-term gratification. Maintaining a relativity of balance requires willpower and long-term thinking abilities. The 3 types of soul. Aristotle thought that all living things have a soul, or anima. When we say anima, it is an intrinsic connection between all living things on the planet, which relates to the world in much the same way as the soul is connected to the human body. So, Aristotle thought that all living things have a soul anima. This is because the soul is what gives life to things. Without a soul, there is only a material object, like an eye without vision. The type of soul defines one's essence. There are 3 kinds of soul, going from the lower primitive level to the higher one. These 3 types of soul are the vegetative soul, sensitive soul, and the rational soul. The vegetative soul is the ability of self-nutrition and growth. This is the soul of plants. So when we say vegetative soul, in the thought of Aristotle, the type of soul possessed by plants, it has the capacity of growth and reproduction but does not have the capacity to receive and react, sense impressions, or the capacity for rational thought. The next soul is the sensitive soul. The sensitive soul is the ability of movement and sensation in addition to self-nutrition and growth. Animals have this soul. So, sensitive soul, it could exist in animate forms of life, allowing perceptions of the world, whilst most animate forms of life were held to be capable of experiencing appetites and desires, and being sensitive to pleasure and pain. And lastly, the last soul is the rational soul. It is the ability of thought and deliberation in addition to movement, sensation, self-nutrition, and growth. Humans have this soul. It is we, humans, have this soul. Is the soul that in scholastic tradition has independent existence apart from the body, and that is the characteristic animating principle of human life as distinguished from animal or vegetable life. Compare animal soul, vegetable soul. So that's the 3 types of soul. And there can be a conflict between the rational part of the soul and the irritational ones. Unlike Plato, who said that to know what is right is to do what is right. Sabi daw ni Plato, para malalaman mo kung ano yung tama kapag ginawa mo kung ano yung tama. And Aristotle thought that one can know what is right to do but still not do it. And sabi naman ni Aristotle, alam ng isang tao kung ano yung tamang gawin, pero hindi pa rin nila ginagawa. This is because the rational soul is not always in charge of the irritational part. Parang walang what we call this? Parang walang magagampanan yung rational soul sa irritational part natin. So, one can have weakness of the will.
Hi everyone, my name is Justine, and I will be the one to discuss this slide and the form and telos. The type of soul gives us different types of potentials and telos. As humans, we have a number of abilities, capabilities, and powers that we can actualize. What is unique for the human form is that we have a rational capacity for knowledge, reasoning, and truth. And this is the main function of being a human. Above all the things in this world, humans have only the capacity to make reasons, acquire knowledge, and seek for the truth. We are conscious beings that are capable of creating a reality that supports the health, well-being, and survival of all. And that makes us unique from other living things compared to the animals and the plants. So, tayo pong mga human beings ay may kakayahan lamang po na makapag-isip, makapagbigay ng rational na rason, at makagain ng knowledge at makahanap ng katotohanan. And so, when the rational soul is in control of the irrational soul, we can become virtuous. We are not born with virtue and our souls are not already good, sabi ni Plato. And according to Plato daw, we are not born with virtue and our souls are not already good. But we can carry within us the potential for being good and virtue. But it takes a lot of hard work and practice to realize this potential. One can know what is right to do but still not do it. Kahit bilang tao, kahit alam natin kung ano yung mga tamang gawin, yung mga bagay na dapat gawin, still hindi pa rin natin nasusunod. So this is because of the irrational soul that is not always in charge of the irrational part. And that's why if the rational soul is the one who has control of the irrational soul, we can finally become virtuous. So sabi po ni Aristotle, kapag yung irrational soul po natin ang superior or nagko-control sa irrational soul natin, maaari po tayong maging isang virtuous person. And meanwhile, according to Plato, we are not born with virtue and our souls are not already good. Sabi ni Plato, pinanganak tayo na hindi pa natin acquire yung virtue and hindi pa good ang soul natin. This actually anchored to the concept of John Locke about the tabula rasa. We've discussed this in our previous discussion in Understanding the Self, and it is about the concept of a man which is born with a blank slate. So, nag-anchor siya sa sinabi ni Plato na nabuhay tayo nang hindi pa natin na-acquire yung virtue and ang soul natin is not already good. Sabi dito, we can carry within us the potential to be a virtuous person. Pero kailangan ng hard work and practice. So, maa-acquire natin as a human being. May potential tayong ma-acquire yung pagiging virtuous person. Pero kailangan ito ng practice at kailangan ng hard work para ma-attain ito. We saw that the form in Aristotle is always related to a telos. The final cause or aim for development. And knowledge is an aim of humans, but not only one. We have different types of potential to fulfill, since the human soul includes many abilities. This includes political, ethical, intellectual, personal, and biological. According to Aristotle, form is always related to a telos. The meaning of telos is the purpose or an end, the final cause or aim for development, while form is what gives potential to fulfill. And according to Aristotle, the body is the soul's matter and soul is the body's form. Knowledge is the aim of humans, but we have different types of potential to fulfill, since the human soul includes many abilities. Aristotle believed in everything in reality was working towards a telos. This was an end or a purpose. Everything had a telos, and something was judged as good or bad on how well it fulfilled its purpose. For example, the telos of the knife. The telos of a knife is to cut, and if a knife is able to cut when a human wants it to, then it has reached its telos and it's fulfilling its purpose. And on the other hand, if the knife cannot cut a certain object as the human wanted, then it's not fulfilling its purpose and it is a bad knife. So that is how Aristotle defined and conceptualized telos. So now, human beings are exactly the same. We also have a telos, we have a purpose, and this is the same purpose for every human. Which makes sense po, diba? Kasi nabubuhay po tayo ng lahat ng ginagawa natin masaya. Kasi sino ba naman pong hindi gagawin yung bagay na hindi makapagpapasaya sa kanya, diba? Kasi buhay natin to. So, syempre, pipiliin natin yung bagay na makapagpapasaya sa atin kasi happiness, nagigive sa atin ang bagay na yun ng satisfaction. So, in that way, magiging feel natin worth it yung living natin. Kapag happy, nagbibigay ng kasiyahan yung mga bagay na ginagawa natin sa buhay natin. So, happiness has intrinsic value. Money only has instrumental value. We want it for what we can get with it. The greatest happiness, which is the concept of eudaimonia, has three qualities that make it the ultimate aim or telos at all actions. So, one is the happiness is desirable in itself, and number two is happiness is not desirable because it brings other goods, and number three, all other goods are desirable because they lead to happiness. Aristotle defined this term as the concept of eudaimonia. This is a type of happiness, a pure happiness or a bliss, the ultimate goal for being alive, full satisfaction and fulfillment. Everything we do is to strive towards eudaimonia. Everything we desire is because we believe it will make us happy and bring us closer to eudaimonia even if we don't know it. So everything we do that sometimes we're not actually aware of is leading us closer to eudaimonia. Like for example, you ask someone, why are you going to work? So she may answer, because I want to earn money. And then you will ask again, why do you want to earn money? And then she may answer, because I can pay bills, I can buy what I want, and then ultimately will give happiness to that person. So that's it. That's how the concept of eudaimonia works. So now, in order for us to fulfill our purpose of eudaimonia, Aristotle believed that we must live a virtuous life. This is vital to the telos of human being, to the goal of the human being, which is what's the goal of human being, is to attain happiness. Aristotle thought that happiness, eudaimonia, comes from living the good life. This is not primarily a life of pleasure, but out of virtue. We become happy when we fulfill our potential in a virtuous way. But we need both intellectual and moral virtues. We must also actualize potentials on our rational soul. So, to be a good and virtuous person, it is not enough to be so now and then. The good action should come spontaneously. Morality should be an integrated part of us so that we make good choices and act morality. So, what Aristotle is trying to say is that the good actions should come spontaneously. And the morality should be an integrated part of us. Dapat, yung morality ay dapat nandito na talaga sa atin. Hindi, at ibig sabihin ng spontaneously is nagagawa natin, ay nag-act tayo in accordance with the morality. Spontaneous na nagagawa natin ang isang bagay na para maging virtuous tayo. Like, virtuous tayo in a way na ganito, nag-act tayo morally. Aristotle thought that the only way to become virtuous is to act virtuous. And to become good, we must do good acts. Moral goodness is a result of habit and takes a lot of practice. So, sabi ni Aristotle na ang only way ng pagiging virtuous person natin ay ang to be a virtuous person and to act good. And moral goodness is a result of a habit and takes a lot of practice. And kailangan natin tong i-practice ang pagiging virtuous person para maging spontaneous na ito sa atin at maging habit na natin ito bilang isang tao, which is yung ganun yung gusto ni Aristotle sa kanyang concept, maging better ang character natin, maging better din tayo as a person. Is the virtue as the golden mean. Aristotle thought that ethical virtues were found in the middle of two extremes. The golden mean, if one has too much of the virtue, it became a vice, and the same if one has too little, it becomes a different vice. So, the term pronesis is a practical judgment or practical wisdom. It is essential for Aristotle's ethics as practical wisdom or judgment, because a virtue cannot be universally defined but must always be considered within a situation. For instance, honesty is a virtue, but what is the right amount of honesty will depend on the situation. As we know, life is complicated. We are always on situation where the moral thing to do is unclear, and that's why Aristotle developed the concept known as pronesis. Pronesis can be translated as a practical wisdom, and Aristotle believed that a virtuous person would have the ability to make informed rational decision on what's the best way to act. And it is not just having an understanding of virtuous character traits, but is knowing how to act upon this understanding and implement these traits when necessary. So Aristotle referred this to doctrine of mean, also known as the golden mean, which is an understanding that a virtue lies between two vices, and when we have knowledge on this, we are in a better position to act in a virtuous way. So, in order for us now to act in a virtuous way, nagsuggest si Aristotle ng concept ng golden mean, in which it is the moderation or striving for a balance between extreme. So, in short, the golden mean is the moderation or striving for a balance between the stream. So, the concept of golden mean is like this. Between is the golden mean, and the other side is the two vices. So in politics, Plato's ideal state was an attempt to develop a state that would help its citizens to become good and virtuous citizens, while Aristotle did not think the ideal state was the best to do, but he agreed with Plato that the state is important for people's moral lives. So Aristotle and Plato both agree that the state is important for people's moral life, and the state should help the citizen become a good and virtuous citizens, as well as the citizens must be good and virtuous for the state, so vice versa. And a good state ought to be stable and help us live good lives. And the state exists for the sake of a good life and for us to fulfill our moral and intellectual potentials. He included political activity in his virtuous life, and humans that he included political activity in virtuous life, and humans are social and political animals, or zon politikon, and the opposite of this is idios or idiot. That means someone who is not interested in politics. So they are called the private citizen. And Aristotle coined. So we have to build a good state in order for us to attain good life, according to Aristotle. And Aristotle asserts that all communities aim at some good. All the states should attain goodness, enable for the citizen to also be a good citizen. So that's what Aristotle was trying to explain. And he called us political animals, or zon politikon, and the opposite of this term is idios or idiot. Someone who is not interested in politics, or those that are private citizens. So I remember this wonderful saying comes from a movie in Netflix entitled Enola Holmes. It says, "Why politics doesn't interest you? Because you have no interest in changing the world that suits you so well." So that's it. I know it's a good quote, or it's a good questions that will really make us realize the importance of involving ourselves in politics, like being an active citizen in attaining goodness, spreading something, addressing societal issues that would help us attain good lives, that will help us address issues in our society. I know we have to start thinking about it, because as Aristotle said, that a good state ought to be stable and help us live good lives. And in order for us to have a good state, we must build it, and that state will build us too, vice versa.
Thank you for listening to our reports. After what we have discussed, we assume or we hope that you can answer the questions presented in your screens. Thank you.